There is an unsung hero in every workshop. It's not the equipment like the table saw or the lathe behind me or the miter saw or any of the equipment. It's the table. It's the workbench. It's what you do your work on that's the most important. And as I look through YouTube, I see a lot of really fancy, really nice woodworking benches. And I was asking myself, does the beginner really need that fancy of a workbench? And something you may ask yourself, do I really need it? And I'm here to answer that question. You really don't need it. You need a workbench like what I've got. It's probably one of the first projects you need to do. It's really easy to build. And when you build your own, you get several advantages, and we'll look into those next. So this is my workbench, and I built it about 10 years ago or longer even. And it's just built out of plywood, just pretty utilitarian grade of plywood. It's got a plywood top, well-used top, plenty of glue and paint on it. But it's at the same height as my table saw, and that's one of the first things you need to do is to build it at the same height as your table saw, as you can see here. So that way it acts as an outfeed table for longer stock and sheet products. So also, when you build your own, you can make it to the size that is good for your workshop, which this one is probably about, 32 by 65 inches or so, tabletop. And it has a shelf down below that catches all the extraneous stuff. I'm still unpacking the shop, and there's all sorts of stuff everywhere still. But when you build one, this is just built out of plywood. So it's got plywood corners and plywood top. And underneath it's pretty simple. So you just got little brackets of plywood on the corners. Those are glued and nailed together. So they're plenty stable and sturdy. And then they're screwed to the bottom and the top with just a little bit of a support along the top. And then they have casters down at the bottom. And I think the casters are important so you can roll it around, because it's a workbench slash outfeed table, so you can move the table around as you need for sheet goods. And you can also move it around as you need to work on stuff. But I prefer this type of table as opposed to a real fancy workbench. I've actually never owned a workbench. I may like one if I get one. I may build one in the future, who knows. But with this is what I've always used to work with. In all of my years of woodworking, we would just use plywood tables. And the good thing about that is, as you can see, there's paint and glue and all sorts of stuff all over it. And as you need to, you can take the table off. It's just held down with some screws. You really can't see those. But it's held down with some screws. And you just take the table off if it gets really too damaged. But you can drill through wood and you can drill right into the tabletop. You don't have to worry about messing up a really nice workbench. And it is just a really utilitarian table. This is what you need to start woodworking with, is a utilitarian table. And this is what I would recommend to build for your first table, first workbench. It serves several purposes. It serves as an outfeed table. It serves as a workbench. You can paint on it. And when you do glue ups, as you can see there, as you do glue ups, you don't have to worry about getting glue on the table. So this is really what you need, and it's really the unsung hero of the workshop. As I've mentioned, if the tabletop gets too messed up, you can always replace it. But if you do a lot of glue ups and paint and you spill some things here and there, you can always take your random orbit sander and just give it a sanding down to smooth out the top. So that way you have a dual purpose table in your shop that serves a lot of different purposes, and you're not messing up a really nice workbench. Those are really nice. I'd love to have one someday, but this has gotten me by for 20 years throughout my cabinet making and frame making, and it just really is one of the first things to build. Woodworking is often, there's a lot of tradition, and you want to get all the planes and the real fancy workbenches and all that, but you just use what you got and you learn with what you got. And there's some things that you can't live without that you should be the first things to build. So I hope you like this video. We'll see you in the next. Thank you.